Filipino Amerasians are abandoned and/or neglected biracial children of Filipino mothers and American fathers, when the United States bases were still open until they closed in 1993 in the Philippines. Many Filipino Amerasians are actively searching for their American fathers. Some of them have been found, but could not be united because of the strict and odd immigration laws. Some American fathers are not even aware they have children who are left behind. The United States government does not recognize these children as United States citizens, and they are even excluded from the Amerasian Act of 1982. Many Filipino Amerasians still experience economic deprivation and social discrimination today.
Amerasians in the Philippines significantly outnumber those living in other countries, with recent estimates as high as 250,000. To explain these large numbers, we first have to look at how the American GI and the Filipino first meet. This can be explained through the U.S. military's 94 years in the Philippines, from the Spanish-American War in 1890 to secession in 1992. During the Cold War, the United States leased military installations throughout the archipelago, which includes the Clark Air Base and the Subic Bay Naval Base as such examples, and they are also the United States' two largest overseas bases at the time. Around these bases appeared bars and clubs where servicemen went to find rest and relaxation, otherwise known as R&R. Here, they have waitresses, dancers, or prostitutes working. However, there is an attraction between the Americans and the Filipinos, and questions begin to arise. 1. Why are they attracted to each other? And 2. What do they see in each other? In a journal article from 1987 by Richard Butney, he concluded, for Filipinos, the motive of a better future or economic security appears especially salient for those Philippine women who worked in the R&R industry as hostesses and prostitutes. To marry a U.S. serviceman is not only an economic upward step, but also allows her to quit working as a prostitute and start a family of her own. For women, the institution of family, along with the role of wife and mother, are highly valued in the Philippines. So the express motive of a better future is not merely economic, but also accords with role expectations for Philippine women. Now, from the point of view from the American GI, he arrives at the city for some R&R, having spent a long time on sea duty, taking orders, and being lonely. Given these initial conditions, the serviceman may be in a state of relationship readiness. It has been suggested that the serviceman cannot marry as attractive a woman in the U.S. as he can in the Philippines. The serviceman may be seen as trading his economic status for the physical attractiveness of a Filipino woman, although for the most part romantic love, not surprisingly, is the most frequent cited motive for Filipinos and North Americans. These couples eventually marry and start a family, but some unfortunate circumstances split them apart, such as soldiers' limited tours of duty, and later, the sudden closures of the bases. While some Amerasians were conceived through committed relationships, many Amerasians were also conceived from prostitution. With Amerasians number in the hundreds of thousands, this causes a profound problem.
A 1999 study commissioned by the non-governmental organization Pearl S. Buck International showed that Amerasians suffered greatly from unemployment, poverty, domestic violence, and sexual abuse. They also experienced relentless discrimination. In a Catholic society that unfairly brands illegitimate children, Filipinos utilize a collection of slurs against Amerasians. For these reasons, most Filipino Amerasians dream of coming to the United States for a better life. But regardless of their American blood, it is very difficult, if not impossible, for them to migrate legally and eventually become naturalized citizens. However, other Amerasians have no such problem. After the Vietnam War, Congress passed the Amerasian Act of 1982, which allowed Amerasian children in Vietnam, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and South Korea to migrate. Filipino Amerasians can become citizens only if their fathers claim them. A reason for this exclusion is the belief that Amerasians in the Philippines underwent much less discrimination than in other countries. Another reason for this exclusion was the fact that most of the women were engaged in prostitution, which is an illegal act and therefore could not be the basis for any legal claim. Having faced rejection on so many levels, many Amerasians consider themselves half American and yearn to be recognized, if not by their fathers, then by the U.S. government. Filipino Amerasians have formed United Philippine Amerasians, a loose network of formal and informal communities of Amerasians who plan to work on creating a national advocacy. They hope to reach out to Amerasians all over the Philippines, coordinate community-level projects, and develop support programs. March 4th has been designated as Amerasian Day in the Philippines. In 2001, Amerasians in Olongapo and Angeles City celebrated Amerasian Day for the first time. During this day, local Amerasians, as well as other Amerasians from all over the Philippines, come together to promote awareness. They want to bring recognition as well as support for the acceptance of Amerasians throughout the Philippines. Today, Amerasians are getting their stories out, and so are able to be united with their fathers, some of who never even knew they had a long-lost child.
One story is Barry Bogart Jr., who was on a singing show similar to American Idol in the United States. While on stage, he told his story. His mother died when he was 5 years old. He made a plea to his father he never knew and hoped that one day they would be united. All Barry knew about his father was that he was stationed at a naval base in the Philippines. Once his mother died, Barry was sent to live in an orphanage, where he looked at pictures of his mother and a father he never knew. Greg Rosa, a man in Seattle, Washington, saw Barry's story and decided to help him find his father. He got in contact with Barry and asked him a few questions about his father. Greg soon tracked Barry's father down and asked him about his girlfriend in the Philippines. When Barry Sr.'s answers were a match, that's when he knew he found the right man. He sent him a picture of Barry Jr., and there was no doubt that Barry was his child, and a DNA test confirmed the match. Greg flew Barry out to Seattle and then made the journey to New Jersey to unite Barry and his father. When Barry met his father, you could tell for the first time in his life that he finally felt complete. Another success story is about Maria Teresa Bolding Mendoza. She never knew her father. She grew up never knowing if she would ever get in contact with him. Due to the advancements of the internet, Teresa was able to find her father as well as a few other relatives. She began to communicate with them via Skype and waited 8 long years until she finally was able to make the pilgrimage to the United States. She was surrounded by her father, sisters, and a nephew in a moment she thought would never happen. These are the stories that prove how prevalent Amerasians are. They search forever trying to find out who they are. They live with broken hearts and incomplete identities. With their stories and the few Amerasian organizations, we can only hope that more forgotten children can be as lucky to be united with their fathers as Barry and Teresa.